highly credible whistleblowers are coming forward and reporting that the FBI intentionally downplayed evidence about Hunter Biden's corrupt business deals.
We're told FBI officials, these are whistleblowers coming from the FBI, that the same official who has been pushing down as disinformation the Hunter Biden information, including the laptop, the same FBI official is involved here with pressuring FBI agents to reclassify cases as domestic violent extremism.
This story should have been identified and investigated by the FBI from the beginning to protect this country from potential national security issues. The fact they didn't is the most enormous scandal.
Disclosures from multiple FBI whistleblowers have showed that agents are bolstering the numbers of domestic violent extremism cases to satisfy their superiors, and they've pressured agents to move cases into that category to create their self-created performance metrics.
Moments like this occur where it's just clear and it's not even room for speculation. It is exactly what we said was going on inside of these departments, inside of the FBI. Again, as these whistleblowers come out, you have to show respect to it and see what's happening.
Chuck Grassley, who is hardly a conspiratorial member of Congress, he's a former chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He is not one of these members that has a faux outrage a day trying to drive the social media numbers. He's a pretty sober-minded guy. So that's the accuser. The accusation could not be more serious. A politicization of the FBI. Now, who's the accused? It's an entity that has had a miserable 6 years.
It's not like one person came to Jim Jordan, the FBI, and said this is happening. It's a big claim to make. Multiple whistleblowers are also saying at the same time this is going on, there's a purge of conservatives at the FBI. They actually put that word in quotes. That's a quote from one of the whistleblowers, a purge of conservatives. So like, what they want is no check on their power to use these instruments of power for political purposes, whether it's to intimidate, silence, scare people from getting involved in politics.
This letter from Chuck Grassley is really just bombshell after bombshell.
They're doing this so that Democrat officials, politicians, are able to cite numbers that actually prove their point that somehow domestic violent extremism is the #1 threat to our country. Not the drugs, not the cartels, not China, not microchips that they control in our tanks and airplanes, cars and phones and everything else. No, it's Americans. The #1 threat to America is Americans. That's what they are trying to sell here.
The FBI believes that Huawei telecom equipment can actually capture and disrupt U.S. military communications.
Since 2017, so a long time now, federal officials have been investigating Chinese land purchases in the U.S. near critical infrastructure, including military sites. In the Huawei equipment that was put atop cell phone towers, guess what? They had spy capabilities. This happened mostly in the rural Midwest near U.S. military bases.
The FBI, in the course of this investigation, was able to determine that this equipment had the capability to recognize, capture, and potentially even disrupt restricted Defense Department communications, potentially offering China a really pivotal and dangerous window into command and control for America's nuclear arsenal.
They have been able to get away with climbing into our systems because the press and the Democrats have literally been saying, don't look at China, look at Russia. The Trump administration tried to do this. When I was ambassador, when I was DNI, we were screaming about what the Chinese were doing. The CNN exclusive, it's not an exclusive. We knew that during the Trump administration. They just didn't pay attention until now.
As a matter of Chinese law, the Chinese government can rightfully demand access to data flowing through Huawei and ZTE systems. Why would anyone grant such power to a regime that has already grossly violated cyberspace?
China has intervened in our universities. They've infiltrated the university system. They have infiltrated congressional offices. I think of Eric Swalwell's office. They are trying to infiltrate Washington, D.C. in counterintelligence capabilities.
These companies have ties to the CCP, and it's not always apparent on the face of whatever company is doing.
I want to give people a little piece of good news, though. Your government, your intelligence agencies know this. The problem is with the politicians at the local, state, and federal level. They've got to educate themselves, and you've got to demand that they focus on China.
This threat is real, and we have to be on top of it.
plea for help from the mayor of New York as immigrants overwhelm shelters in America's largest city. This follows similar complaints from Washington, D.C.'s Mayor Muriel Bowser.
You gotta love this. The New York City mayor blaming Arizona and Texas for the migrant problem, homelessness crisis too, in New York City.
We need some of those states that have been giving people one-way tickets. We need them to understand that this must be a partnership in this country to deal with those who are coming here seeking refuge or asylum.
Now you got the homeless advocates saying, hey, look, Mayor, you could blame this on Texas and Arizona, which it's not Texas and Arizona. It's the federal government putting migrants coming into the United States into your city. But the fact of the matter is the problem was there before, and they're pushing back saying that's not an excuse for not getting services.
Governor Abbott released a statement putting the blame on President Biden. He said, quote, Texas has not bused any migrants to New York. Instead, it's President Biden who has flown plane loads of migrants to New York.
This is exactly what we were talking about when we said you had an open border policy, which is basically what we have, when you don't have border security, which is basically we don't have, and then take another step. It doesn't just affect Texas and California and Arizona or New Mexico. It affects every single city in the country.
I'm sure, Joe, that border towns and states nearest Mexico, which have been saying the same thing for years, are thinking maybe now Washington, D.C. will pay attention.
It's been very clear that this was not Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico and California. This was the federal government doing the relocation of illegal immigrants coming into the United States. But he made the statement, all hands on deck. And doesn't all hands on deck have to start at the source of the area? Once they're in the United States, it's really very late in the game to try to fix it.
We have people voting in just a couple days in Kansas next Tuesday. The vote is to override a old state court decision. All it really does is allow then the legislature to start legislating on restrictions on abortion. So that's what people are actually voting on there. That's the truth. There's so much misinformation in that vote.
It is the first major statewide vote on abortion since Roe versus Wade was overturned. The survey found 47% of likely primary voters in Kansas plan to vote for the pro-life amendment. 43% will vote against it.
The decision in Dobbs was great because it took away the club of this, made up constitutional right to abortion. So it opened up then the ability to return it to the states, which is what the law required. So when Roe was overturned, we always said it returns it to the states. Now we have real state challenges.
Dark red are the ones that basically banned abortion. There are 16 already in total, with 2 put on hold by the courts. The lighter red are the states in the process of putting those bans in place.
We have got an interactive map up at aclj.org. It's aclj.org/abortion. Every state, even those shaded in gray, which usually mean that it's a legislative issue, what you'd have to do next, what action is being taken in your state.
The pro-life perspective is really gaining strength. I think the question for all of us is at the ACLJ is we've got to make sure that the pro-life speech is available to be made. And we've been fighting that battle for 40 years.
Our work is really just beginning. We are meeting with crisis pregnancy centers. We are protecting them from the vandalism and the attacks that they've gotten. We're protecting them from state laws that are coming down. We're protecting them from even the Biden executive order maybe attacking them.
In Massachusetts right now, those crisis pregnancy centers that are there to fool people who are looking for pregnancy termination help outnumber true abortion clinics by 3 to 1. We need to shut them down here in Massachusetts, and we need to shut them down all around the country.
Elizabeth Warren was talking about how we need to get rid of essentially all crisis pregnancy centers, pro-life pregnancy centers around the nation. And when you have that kind of rhetoric, it does become very clear that this has nothing to do with prenatal, postnatal care. This has only to do with their big business.
It's one of the first opportunities in the country where people, not just legislatures, but people themselves are going to determine if their legislature has the ability to start legislating. Now that Roe has been overturned and that as you said, Roe is no longer hanging over these state legislatures. So encourage your friends, if you're in Kansas, to vote yes.